It was a typical Friday night, or rather early Saturday morning by that point. After escaping a long, draining closing shift at work, I'd microwaved a sad excuse for a meal, cracked open an energy drink, stocked up on snacks, and settled in for a serious gaming session with friends. Ready for a late one, we dove in, losing ourselves in the game for hours. I completely lost track of time, immersed in the glow of the monitor and the chatter in my headset. Then, sometime deep in the quietest hours of the night, there was a knock. Not tentative, but a solid, deliberate rap on the front door. At first, distracted, I just mumbled, "Hold on, guys," into my mic, pulling off my headset and starting to stand up. As I turned away from my desk, the sudden contrast struck me. The intense darkness of the room outside the bubble of my monitor's light, and the corresponding pitch blackness outside the windows. Standing there in the sudden quiet, headset off, the lateness of the hour sank in. It hit me immediately how deeply wrong it was for someone to be knocking at my door at... what time even was it? 2 a.m.? 3 a.m.? That's precisely when I saw him. Framed in the narrow window beside the front door, illuminated faintly by my monitor's glow reflecting off the glass, stood a man. He was looking directly at me. I froze solid, a block of ice forming in my stomach. He wasn't moving, just staring intently at me. His features were hard to make out in the dimness, but the intensity of his gaze was palpable. Then his voice, muffled but sharp, cut through the glass. He yelled something, a question. I was too stunned, too flooded with adrenaline to comprehend the words. "What?" I managed, the word barely a croak, taking an involuntary step closer to the window, morbid curiosity warring with stark fear. He repeated himself, louder this time. "Are you Jake?" Or maybe it was Jack. The name was quick, slightly slurred, but it definitely wasn't mine. My mind raced. Mistaken identity. Drunk guy? Something worse? I shook my head numbly. No. He held my gaze for another second, then, without another word, simply turned, walked away from the window, and melted back into the darkness beyond the edge of my yard. Shaken, my hands trembling slightly, I lunged for the blinds, yanking them shut. I stumbled back to my computer, heart hammering. "Dude, holy crap," I stammered into the mic, trying to explain what just happened. My friends were silent for a beat, then bombarded me with questions. Seriously, was he drunk? Did you recognize him? Their skepticism slowly turning to concern as they heard the genuine tremor in my voice. Their questions, meant to help, only amplified my unease, making the encounter feel even more sinister. "Lock your doors, man!" "Now," one of them urged. Following their advice, I muted my mic and methodically went around, checking the front door lock, already engaged, the back door deadbolt, and then, feeling foolish but spooked, locking all the windows, something I honestly never bothered with before. Reassured by the clicks of the locks and by my friends staying on the line, talking me down, we eventually, hesitantly, returned to our game. A couple of hours passed. The initial terror faded, replaced by the familiar rhythm of the game. Honestly, I'd almost managed to convince myself it was just a weird, random encounter, maybe a drunk looking for the wrong house. I figured if the man intended real trouble, it would have happened immediately after he first appeared. Then a sudden, loud series of knocks erupted from behind me, much more forceful this time, rattling the front door in its frame. It nearly made me jump out of my chair. "He's back! He's at the front door again!" I hissed into the headset, voice trembling. My friends were instantly alert. Okay, don't open it. Look through the peephole. Call the cops, dude, right now. Heart pounding, I slid off my chair and moved as quietly as possible across the room. Palms sweating, I pressed my eye to the peephole. It was him again, standing patiently on the porch, bathed in the faint porch light I'd forgotten to turn off. But something was different. As I watched, holding my breath, he kept glancing sharply to his right, off the porch into the darkness of my side yard, as if looking at something, or more chillingly, someone. I backed away slowly, fumbling my phone out of my pocket with trembling hands. I dialed 911, whispering the situation, the previous encounter, the return, the man on the porch, his strange glances, to the calm, professional voice of the operator. Another series of insistent knocks echoed through the house as I crept back to the peephole. The man was still there, still looking off to the side. Then he made a small, almost imperceptible hand gesture, a slight flick of the wrist, before knocking one final heavy time. In the relative quiet that followed the knock, beneath the operator's voice in my ear, I heard it, the soft crunch of footsteps on the gravel path running along the side of my house. My eyes darted towards the sound, tracking it until it stopped directly beneath one of my side windows, one of the ones I had specifically locked earlier. A second later, I saw the window glass shudder and shift upwards slightly, maybe half an inch, before stopping abruptly as it hit the lock mechanism inside. It settled back down with a soft, metallic thud. A pause. Then they tried again, rattling it more forcefully this time, testing the lock. It held firm. Thank God it held. Silence stretched for what felt like an eternity, maybe a full minute. I stood frozen between the door and the side window, phone pressed hard against my ear, listening to the operator assuring me officers were close, my gaze riveted on that side window. Suddenly, a loud, ugly scraping sound tore through the night. Metal on wood, maybe. Like something flat and hard, a pry bar perhaps, being wedged into the wooden window frame near the lock. I could see the entire frame around the glass visibly bowing and vibrating under the pressure. My mind raced frantically. Grab a knife? Barricade myself? I backed away further into the room, heart threatening to beat out of my chest. Then, abruptly, the scraping stopped. Footsteps pounded suddenly, sprinting from the front door area towards the side window, followed immediately by the sound of two distinct sets of footsteps running away from the house, fading rapidly into the night. Mere seconds later, the street outside exploded in flashing red and blue lights, painting frantic patterns across my living room walls through the gaps in the blinds. Relief washed over me in a dizzying wave as I heard the officers approaching. They were professional, thorough, taking my statement, examining the door and the side window. They found fresh pry marks scarring the wood around the window frame, confirming my story. But there wasn't much else to go on. I gave the best description I could of the man I'd seen at the window and the peephole, but I hadn't gotten a look at the second person at all. Without more evidence, fingerprints or witnesses, it wasn't enough. It's been over a year now since that night. There's been no sign of them returning, no further incidents. But I double-check my locks religiously now, every single night. And sometimes, when I game late, a random noise from outside still makes my blood run cold. I've always loved my quiet house out here in the country, or at least I used to. I want to tell you about one night, a night that changed how I feel about being alone. My house is small, old, tucked away far from the busy city. I chose it for the silence, for the peace that came with it. It was a cool autumn evening. I was settled in my living room with a book. The soft light from the lamp made the room feel warm, safe. As I read, I heard a small noise outside, just faint. At first I thought it was just a tree branch rubbing against the window. You know, normal house sounds. I tried to ignore it, went back to my book. But soon, I heard more sounds. This time it was clearer. A soft crunch, like someone walking on the gravel path near the house. I got up to check the door, and a real chill went right through me. The front door, which I know I had locked just before I sat down, it was slightly open, just a crack. I never leave my door unlocked, let alone open. My heart began to beat fast, hard against my ribs. I slowly, carefully, reached out and pushed it closed. The click of the lock felt loud in the silence. But the awful feeling that someone had been there, right there, it made my hands shake. I looked around the room, my eyes darting everywhere, searching, and I saw that things were not as I had left them. A small side table. It had been moved, just slightly, but enough to notice. And on the coffee table, there was a candle, half burned, sitting right there. I hadn't lit any candle that night. It sounds small, I know, but seeing that, proof that something wasn't right, it made me incredibly uneasy. It felt like a stranger had just walked through my home, quietly, without leaving any obvious sign except these little creepy changes. That's when I remembered my outdoor camera. I'd set it up mostly for peace of mind. You know, living alone out here. Never thought I'd actually need it like this. I hurried to my computer, pulled up the camera feed, rewound the footage, back to around the time I first heard the noises. And there, just for a moment, flickering on the screen, I saw it. A figure, masked. The image was too quick, too dark to be sure. Couldn't make out any details. But it was enough. A shock went through me, cold and sharp. And then, almost right after the figure vanished, the screen went dark. Signal lost. I couldn't tell if the person was still out there, hiding in the dark, or if they were already gone. That feeling of not knowing, it was terrifying. The next day, I spoke to a neighbor, asked if they'd seen anything unusual. He told me that other people nearby had seen strange things too. Possible break-ins, but nothing stolen, just weird signs, like someone testing things out. Hearing that, it brought back that cold fear. This wasn't just in my head. I called the police. They came, they took a report, they looked around, but they couldn't find any clear signs of an intruder. No forced entry, they said. No obvious damage. Nothing solid. Nothing that could prove someone had actually come inside my house. Since that night, I haven't felt safe in my home. Not truly. Every small noise, the house settling, the wind, it makes my heart race. Every dark shadow in the corner of my eye, it leaves me with this awful feeling of dread. I still wonder what happened that night. Who was it? Was it just one person or many? What did they want? The truth, it feels hidden. And the fear, that's still with me. It's with me every single time I lock the door.